Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the C Files. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to hit that like button and that subscribe button as you can get more content like I'm going to give you tonight. While the National Convention, the Democratic National Convention, is in its third day as I'm recording this, and there's the protesters outside of the convention, and then there are the folks inside the convention. There is a difference between them, even though both claim to be Democrats. And then there is a contrast between what the Democrats are doing in their convention and what the Republicans did in their convention. And I want to take just a few moments and explain the difference between the RNC's convention, the DNC's convention, and then thirdly, the protesters outside of the DNC. What we're seeing between the DNC and the RNC in their two conventions is the contrast of two completely opposite and different worldviews. The worldview that was presented in the Republican National Convention is a worldview that believes that there is a God, a worldview that believes that God has certain attributes. He is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. So that all that those are fancy theological words. It simply means that this God that they were presenting at the RNC is all knowing and all powerful, right? So omnipotent, omnipresent, and everywhere at the same time. And this God is holy and righteous and full of mercy and grace, right? So this God that they were presenting in the RNC convention is a God who is the standard of holiness. Now, that gets heavier into a theological concept concerning the relationship between man and God. Who is man? Who is God? What is the condition of man in comparison to the holiness of God? And all of that is theological. It's written, it's in the scriptures, laid out in the scriptures, and it's written in church confessions, okay? But we're not going to get into all of that. What we're going to say simply is all of the policies that were spoken of in the Republican National Convention and the agenda that they had presented, those things are born out of or branches of the root, which is the worldview that they have presented. And the root is everything I was just talking about. There is a God. This God has attributes, as I had mentioned before. He's the creator of the universe. And so, therefore, you have the concept of special creation. You have the concept that man is made in the image of God and therefore has inherent value because we are made in the image of God, and so forth. And so, out of that belief system comes the idea that abortion, for example, is something that they cannot support, even though they talked about making a few exceptions, which I don't agree with the exception of rape and incest when it comes to that, because then now once they do that, they're becoming inconsistent with their own worldview. But we'll talk about that in another video to explain that more. But the point is that that is what caused that convention to go the way it went. The ideas that they were presenting, even the economic ideas and all of that, all branched out of the worldview that there is a God, that God created the universe, that God is holy and righteous, and we are made in his image, and therefore we are responsible to that God for our actions. Okay? So that's RNC convention in a nutshell. DNC, in contrast, does not present that particular worldview. The DNC presents more of a secular humanist, atheistic, Darwinian evolutionary worldview. So, contrast between divine special creation versus Darwinian evolution, cosmic evolution, and so forth. The contrast between there is a God and this God is all of the attributes I've mentioned before versus there is no God other than man himself. Man is God, right? We are our own God. And so out of that particular worldview comes all of the beliefs and agendas and details of what they would plan to do, what they support, what they don't support. All of that comes out of that atheistic, secular humanist, Darwinian evolutionary worldview. Over here, man has inherent value. Over here, man is basically stardust, as Carl Sagan said in his documentary, The Cosmos. Um, the concept that we're not made in the image of God, it's more of a concept of we're made in the image of stardust. And stardust does not have inherent value. And therefore, humans do not have any inherent value other than the value that we assign to ourselves. And so, when it comes to abortion, for example, which is a great example because it's been talked about a lot in the DNC convention, the reason they're talking about that a lot is because they believe that restricting abortion is restricting freedoms and rights, basic human freedoms and rights. I don't know how they come up with basic human freedoms and rights out of their worldview because that's not consistent with their worldview, but they do. That abortion, it's an attack on women basically because it's putting a form of slavery upon the ability of women to do whatever they want with their own bodies. So they don't associate that baby inside the womb to be a separate person or entity from the mother. They lump the mother and the tissue, as they call it, inside the womb to be one and the same. Born out of an atheistic, secular humanist, Darwinian evolutionary worldview, that would be consistent with that worldview. So, and what you're seeing, I can't go through all of that because it takes too much time, but what you're seeing is born out of the core beliefs that each side has. So you have to ask yourself, what is the core belief? Anytime you're getting into an argument with someone or disagreeing with someone, well, they believe this and it doesn't make sense to me, and we end up talking past one another sometimes because we're not communicating well. And the reason that happens is because we're not really getting down to the crux of the issue. The crux of the issue is, wait a minute, what is your actual real core belief system? What is the worldview that you're operating from, that you're coming up with all of these branches that branch out of that worldview, and why you're concluding the way you are in this particular subject matter, right? So that's what's happening. You're seeing that contrast. Now, the DNC is being accused, as far as the people inside the convention hall, They are being accused of not being consistent with their worldview by the people who are protesting outside of of the convention hall. The anarchists outside who are screaming in the camera, and maybe some of you have seen this because people have been presenting it on social media, screaming in the camera, burn it all down, and let's just burn the American flag and all of that. Burn it all down. Why would they say burn it all down? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't benefit me if you burn it all down. Maybe it doesn't benefit me, but it does stay consistent with their worldview. Because if we're nothing more than stardust and we don't have inherent value other than the value that we assign to ourselves, and this world really has no meaning at all, it's just everything that we see is just a cosmic accident that resulted in us, then why not burn it all down? If I put Lysol on a table counter, right, on a counter or a table, and I wipe that down, and I wipe out millions of microscopic organisms in that one act of 2 seconds of wiping down that table, is that murder? Or is that just getting rid of germs? Well, what worldview are you operating out of? Well, if that's just wiping away germs, and I am no different than those organisms, I mean, they're made of stardust, they're made in the image of stardust, I'm made in the image of stardust. Just because I'm bigger in size, just because I have more intelligence, just because I am able to have emotions and relationships and so forth, that doesn't necessarily, if being consistent with that worldview, mean that I have more value than the organisms, the germs, if you will, that I wiped off of that tablecloth. Why should I be considered more valuable than them? We're both living organisms made from stardust, according to that worldview. So if that's the case, how would abortion be considered murder from that particular worldview? Well, it wouldn't be. I'm not killing another life. I'm just wiping away another organism that's getting in my way and making life inconvenient for me. So how would that be considered murder if we're made in the image of stardust and not made in the image of God? And this is basically the argument that they are making. But if you're over here on the RNC side, it's completely different. Oh, made in the image of God. Okay, now everything changes when it comes to that. Yes, that would clearly be considered murder. Do you see how I'm going with this? And then for the people outside of the DNC convention hall, they're the anarchists. Well, they would be being consistent like they are. They would be able to say, "Oh no, that's not murder. Do what you want with that blob of tissue inside of your womb. It's just stardust anyway. Why bother? Burn it all down. Just burn it all down." And if I'm just burning it all down, that includes that blob of tissue inside of that woman's womb. And how dare those Republicans say otherwise? Do you see where I'm going here? So, one worldview has declared war against the other worldview. And that's where we find ourselves. And people are going to vote based upon those two worldviews. And in my estimation, people have already made up their minds who they're going to vote for. I don't know that over the next however many days it is till the election, because it's getting very, very close, that the number of people that are going to be affected with arguments and commercial advertisement and everything is going to be very, very minimal, to the point of being insignificant. I really do believe that everybody has already, I would say over 90% of the people have already made up their mind who they're going to support in this election. But hopefully that helps you to understand why people are saying what they're saying and why they're thinking the way they are thinking. It comes down to their core belief systems. So, being a Christian myself, my core belief system is on the side that says we're made in the image of God and so forth and so on. So my view concerning political things is going to be influenced heavily by that worldview. Hopefully that makes sense. So, enjoy the rest of your week, folks. God bless. I'll see you next time on the C Files.